Hello and happy Fitness Friday. Welcome to part one of a two-part series about high blood pressure and how it can have negative effects on your health. So this will be part one of a two-part series, part one today, part two next Friday. I am Dr. Ayla Donlin. I'm one of your MyZone Master Trainers. My colleague Emily is away for the next couple of weeks, and then she will be back to join me after that. Hope that you are all doing really well on this Friday. If you are looking for more information about MyZone, please head to the myzone.org website. You can get all kinds of information about the MyZone system there. And then Emily and I contribute to a blog, a master trainer blog. If you scroll down about mid-page on the main website, you'll see that blog, and it's going to provide you with information of how you can use the MyZone system to effectively incentivize you for your workouts and also to hold you accountable and of course reward you for all of your workouts. Emily and I also host a podcast, the MyZone Moves podcast, that you can find on iTunes or Google Play, wherever you get your podcasts from. And then of course we are here live on the MyZone Facebook page every Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific time. Or you can catch replays on the MyZone Moves YouTube channel. Hello Sue, hello Michael, hello Camilla, and hello Coach B. I love that you're all tuning in. And speaking of which, as you're signing in this morning, let me know who you are, where you're signing in from. If you did a workout today, let me know how it went, how you feel now, and how you used your MyZone system to do that. As you know, March is all about heart health at MyZone. And so this two-part series is helping you get a better handle on what high blood pressure means and what we can do about it and how you can use the MyZone system effectively to help you with that. So let's get right into the content here on Fitness Friday. When is the last time that you had your blood pressure checked? For most of us, it's probably pretty recently, because now getting blood pressure checked is a routine part of a visit to your physician's office. So many of us will have those numbers readily available. So here are a few other questions for you. Do you know what your blood pressure numbers mean? And do you know how blood pressure affects your health? Blood pressure, and specifically high blood pressure or hypertension, is a very real thing in developed nations. So in the UK, about 30% of adults age 20 and above have high blood pressure. In the United States, that number's a little bit higher. And because we had new guidelines that came out from the American College of Cardiology and the American Heart Association, this was in November 2017, the US adult population went from a prevalence of about 35% of adults having high blood pressure to now close to 50% of the US adult population having high blood pressure. And if that's you, don't worry, there are things that we can do about it. And this two-part series is to help us better understand that and better understand what behaviors we can effectively act on to take better care of ourselves and to control our blood pressure. So a little bit of information first. Your blood pressure is the pressure of your blood in your circulatory system. Blood pressure is recorded as your systolic blood pressure over your diastolic blood pressure. Systolic blood pressure indicates how much pressure your blood is exerting against your artery walls when your heart beats, whereas diastolic blood pressure is an indication of how much pressure your blood is exerting against your artery walls while your heart is resting again between beats. Okay, so systolic is the pressure against the artery walls when your heart beats. Diastolic is the pressure against your artery walls when your heart is resting between beats. Normal blood pressure is considered, or is categorized, I should say, as a systolic reading of below 120 and a diastolic reading of below 80. So 120 over 80, anything below that is considered normal or healthy blood pressure. Generally, more emphasis is placed on an elevated systolic blood pressure as a risk factor for cardiovascular disease. However, either elevated systolic or diastolic blood pressure can be used to diagnose high blood pressure or hypertension. Now, I mentioned before that the American College of Cardiology and the American Heart Association came out with new blood pressure and hypertensive guidelines effective in November of 2017. And in the blog on the myzone.org website, you can see these new categorizations and you can see where you fall. So again, normal blood pressure is considered anything below 120 over 80. So have a look at that and see what you think. Hello, Wilden from Lancaster. Oh, I'm glad you had a good workout this morning. That's awesome. Good on you. All right, a few of the negative health effects of blood pressure. I'm sure many of you are pretty familiar with this, right? And high blood pressure is also known as hypertension. So those might be used interchangeably or synonymously. And I mentioned before statistics about how prevalent high blood pressure or hypertension is, like 1 in 3 adults in the UK and more so in the US, right? So here are a few of the negative implications of blood pressure on our health. And there's more detail in the blog. I'm not going to go as far into detail this morning on the broadcast. So if you really want more of the nitty-gritty detail, get into the blog and that'll help unpack some more of the negative health effects. Part 1 will focus a little bit more on that. Part 2 is going to focus a little bit more on what we can do about it, right? So high blood pressure has negative health implications beyond just our arteries and our heart, but that's of course what we think of first, right? So when we have high blood pressure, we're at an increased risk for damage to our arteries because the pressure can increase damage to the cells in your artery's inner lining, and it can also cause narrowing of your arteries, and that can contribute to heart disease. It can also put you at an increased risk for aneurysm, which is a weakening in your artery wall, and that causes a bulge in the artery known as an aneurysm. And that can happen in any artery throughout your body, but it's more common or most common in your aorta, which is the largest artery in your body. So again, this damage can contribute to coronary artery disease. It can contribute to an enlarged left heart and heart failure. So this is kind of a big deal. This is something that we definitely want to keep an eye on, and we want to control high blood pressure if we are diagnosed with that. Beyond your arteries and your heart, high blood pressure has negative health implications for your brain, and this is unpacked a little bit more in the blog, like I mentioned. Also for your kidneys, for your eyes, and for your sexual organs. So part 1 and then a little bit in part 2 gives you some more detail about high blood pressure can negatively affect those systems of your body. Take faith, my friends. Although there is heavy information around the negative effects, there are so many things that we can do about it. And probably step 1, of course, is to have an effective conversation with your healthcare provider, with your physician, about your blood pressure and a game plan for what to do about it. But there are 3 behaviors specifically that we can take action on, and these are in part 2, so we'll spend a little bit more time next week. But exercise, and that's where MyZone comes in, nutrition, and stress management are 3 things that we can focus on to control or decrease our high blood pressure. But let's talk a little bit more about MyZone and how it can really help us. And I wanted to share with you this morning, I know many of us are probably in a situation where a huge part of why we exercise is to stay as healthy as possible. We use it as a preventive measure to prevent chronic disease or issues. And many of us probably have a family history of chronic disease. I know in my family, there is family history of heart disease and heart issues. And so that is something that I think about, and that is something that motivates me to take really good care of myself and to use a tool like MyZone, which can hold me accountable to appropriate intensities that keep me at the health and fitness levels that I want to be at. So I'm really grateful for MyZone and the ability to do that. And I'm sure that you're in that same situation as well. But what I try to do is not always focus sheerly on that, because that can be kind of a fear-based place and an extrinsic motivator, right? But this is what's so great about MyZone, is that we can also enjoy our exercise and find ways of being rewarded and incentivized for it. And in part 2, I'm going to unpack a little bit more how you can use the MyZone system to train your cardiorespiratory system, your cardiovascular system, and help to control your high blood pressure and improve your heart health, because March is all about heart health. But I'm going to give you a little teaser right now. You've heard us talk many times before about minimum guidelines that you want to be achieving. So strap on your MyZone belt, and every week you should be earning around 300 MyZone effort points, and that is helping you meet the minimum recommendations for physical activity that have been proven in research to help decrease risk for chronic disease or issues like high blood pressure. So that's getting 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity. That would be like your blue and your green zones, or 75 minutes of high intensity activity. That's your yellow and your red zones each week, or a combination thereof. And then you can go back to your activity calendar. You can check out what you've done, what zones you were in, how many MyZone effort points you earned. And if you're earning on average 1,200 MEPs for the month, you're moving on up in your MyZone status. Have you checked where you're at in your MyZone status lately? Every time you sign into the app, you're reminded of what your MyZone status is. And I reached Hall of Fame, ladies and gents, a little while ago, and I have to say, I was just really honored and pleased by that accomplishment, meaning that for 4 years in a row, I had met the minimum recommendation of 1,200 MEPs per month. I hope that you are keeping track of that and letting that really make you feel good about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And Coach B is saying 1,300. 1,200, 1,300, it's right around that range. I always get a little bit confused myself. 300 a week, I thought it was 300 a week, 1,200 per month, but it might be 1,300 per month. That keeps you progressing in your MyZone status. Check it out, because it's available to you on your app, so double check that. Thank you, Sue, I really appreciate that. And so keep going, you guys, and if you have questions about high blood pressure or hypertension, please bring them on. We've got part 2 coming next week. I'm not a physician, so I'm not going to try to offer you any diagnostic or medical information, but I'm definitely, it's within my scope to talk about how exercise and other healthful behaviors can play a role in 1,300. Thank you, Camila. I appreciate you double checking me on that, you guys. Good on you. So 300 per week, 1,300 per month in order to move up in your MyZone status. Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Yes, so if you have questions about high blood pressure or hypertension, bring them on. We'll have a little additional conversation about it next week. And in the meantime, keep getting your workouts in, and as always, keep moving forward. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Happy Fitness Friday.